welcome to Israel Unpacked. Today we'll be unpacking for you the question of crony capitalism and political corruption in Israel. And to do so we have Doron Navot, Dr. Doron Navot, who's a political scientist, and his main field of study is political corruption. Thank you very much and welcome to our show.
Hi.
Okay, so there's a bunch of questions that I would like to ask you about political corruption and crony capitalism, etc. But before we do so, I would like to discuss another issue, the question of Israel and democracy and the status thereof. And the question is Israel, within its Green Line borders, a democracy, a democratic state to all its citizens?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, we will talk about it without the question of corruption right now.
Yes.
I would like to say something in general.
Mm-hmm.
We have to remember that the meaning of democracy is not clear-cut.
Right.
So when you're asking about the democratic nature of Israel, we better define what do we mean by democracy.
Sorry to interrupt, isn't there an academic definition of what democratic is?
No, that's right. There is no one
Okay.
definition of democracy, but the minimum of a state, for democratic state, is election, or the right to participate in election, to vote, to be elected, to each and every citizen of the state. And in this minimal standard or requirement, you can say that Israel, in the Green Line, in the borders of the Green Line, is a democratic state.
Okay.
I would even say more. I think that it's not only formally, or in this minimum criterion, democratic state. It's more than that. I think you have democratic ethos in Israel. I think you have democratic civil society. I think you have a democratic discourse. We are a democratic state. However, in addition to this fact, we have discrimination. And the sad thing is that I think we can see that democracy can live with institutional discrimination.
Let me just, sorry to interrupt again, let me just, to clarify to our viewers, when you say discrimination, you're specifically talking about discrimination against Arab minorities.
Yes,
okay.
I think that it's not even the opinion of the academy.
Mm-hmm.
It's an official statement from our committee.
Okay.
It's a national investigation committee that asserted, declared that you have discrimination against the Arabic citizens in Israel. So it's not something academic.
Yeah.
It's a reality that the state itself acknowledged it.
Okay.
So we have a discrimination. And one of the bothering things about Israel is that the democratic dynamics that don't solve it. So you have democracy, you have Arabic citizens, they participate in the political system, they vote, they have a right to speech, they participate. And still you don't solve the discrimination. So I'm worried about the condition of the Arabic citizens. And
Is this discrimination formulated into the Israeli law? Like, do you have laws that are different when it comes to Jews and when it comes to Arab minorities?
First of all, the self-identification of Israel is a Jewish state, a Jewish and a democratic state, and the Jewish factor encourage the discrimination of Arabic citizens, of course.
Right.
And it's a Zionist state.
Sure.
So it's not only a Jewish state. It's
Yes. So would it be fair to say that given the circumstances of the unique circumstances of the establishment of the State of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, given this paradigm, that the democracy, so-called, that exists in Israel is the closest you can possibly come to sustaining both a Jewish state and democracy, or even does it not even hold in that circumstance?
I think that our goal should be not to abolish the Jewish character or the Jewish definition. I think that our goal is to make it more democratic and to make the Jewish less racist, less antagonist, less, and it was 2 decades ago, I mean, for example, at the second Rabin government,
Yeah.
you had a state, it was a Jewish and a democratic, but it was much more democratic, much more liberal, and it was a Jewish state. But the meaning of Jewish was not that discriminating or racist as it became after Rabin's assassination and in the last decade.
So let me make sure I understand. What you're saying is that during the Rabin era, there were laws concerning that are today discriminatory that before were not discriminatory, or is the law the same law but just interpreted differently? Or
I think that the change is in the policy,
Uh-huh.
the policy, the attitudes, the atmosphere in Israel is today is worse than 2 decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
Today, the Jewish majority is more racist, more discriminatory,
Yeah.
there is more discrimination than it used to be. And I think that it's something that can be changed, can be and should be improved without abolishing the definition of the Israeli state. Israel can be Jewish and democratic and liberal, and to improve, and it should improve, the condition of the Arabic citizens.
Yeah.
The question is what happened. I think that
the regime changed. Rabin, Netanyahu.
Right. This is one of the things, and more generally, I think that we become more liberal in the economic sense, more selfish, and more antagonist, and there are more sectors in the society. There is a less state that take care for all its citizens, and the political system is much more divided and much more discriminated. And the poor are poorer, and the weak are weaker, and the strong are stronger.
And richer.
That's right, and which we can take it to also to the issue of corruption, because I see a connection between.
So if we've come to the issue of corruption, could you first, before we actually talk specifics, could you define what political corruption is?
Yes, of course. Political corruption, it's also a controversial notion, but we do agree in the research, in the academy, and in the bodies that fight corruption in the international arena, that political corruption is the abuse of public power for private gain.
Financial gain? Or
it can be a financial gain, but it have to be a private.
Right.
Which means it can be a political gain, but for the politician, not for the public good. Whenever you have someone that uses political power that was meant to serve the public, and he takes the power, and he serves himself, his political goals, his friends, his family,
so
his own pocket, that is political corruption or public corruption.
Okay.
If you don't have the private, you don't talk about the public corruption, you can talk about abuse of power, you can talk about illegality, you can talk about other things. When we're talking about public corruption, you're talking about people who abuse power for their own benefit sake.
Okay, so having now understood what political corruption is, to what extent would you say Israel is corrupt, especially in comparison to other Western countries? How bad are we doing? What's the situation?
I think that surprisingly, maybe the state is not more corrupt than other states.
I'm shocked.
The Israeli state, I would even say more. The Israeli state, you find in the Israeli state, islands of clean government and islands of fight against corruption.
Give me an example.
If you take an example, the prosecution of Israeli Prime Minister, you cannot do it in a corrupt state. In a corrupt state, the prosecution is corrupt.
Or an Israeli president, for that matter, or ministers.
Right. So ironically, the fact that politicians go to jail is an indication.
It's a good sign.
It's not only a good sign, but it's also a good sign.
Okay.
It's a bad sign because it means that you have corruption among politicians.
Sure.
But it's a good sign in the sense that you can see that the state is independent. It has a relative autonomy versus politicians. And if you see that the state is fighting against the capital owners, which it means that the state has a relative autonomy vis-a-vis the business community, which is not something trivial.
Mm-hmm.
So in this sense, Israel is a strong state, a clean state, and not corrupt state. And if you compare it to American state, I think in several aspects we are better. We have less problems of wealth that capture the state. In America, you have a huge problem of lobbyists and corporation.
And by the way, Israel uses that lobby system to its advantage. So it might not, it might not make use of it here, but it does indeed make use of it in America with, the Israeli lobby, etc. First of all, I'm glad to hear we're not as corrupt as one might think. Would you say there's more political corruption in certain governmental parties than there are in other parties?
I would say that in certain spheres, certain aspects of Israeli public life, you have more corruption if you compare it to 3 or 4 decades ago.
Okay.
You have less virtuous politicians, less and less politicians with power that do care for the public. You can say that.
So nowadays they just care about themselves.
That's right. Yeah. You have this kind of problem.
Right.
But it's more in the political class, less the state, more the political class. I hope that the distinction is clear.
Okay.
I'm distinguishing between the state, the bureaucracy of the state, and the political class, or the party. In the party system, you find that you have cleaner parties. Most of the parties today are clean.
Right.
The people don't acknowledge it, but most of the
they
parties,
find it hard to believe, don't they?
Most of, if you look at the Labour Party, a part of it is changes in the Israeli political system in general. You see that more and more parties are clean. You don't find corruption the way you found a decade ago, or even in the days of Mapai, which was a corrupt system. You don't have it anymore in Israel. So there are things that are better. But you don't find virtuous leaders, you don't find a leader like Ben-Gurion or like Begin that is an example for virtue, for self-sacrifice, for love of the country. You hear a lot about the top leaders, including Prime Minister, that even if they don't abuse power, they don't really symbol of sacrifice or love of public affairs.
Right.
So the situation is a bit complicated, and I don't think that you can say that we are in a very, very clear situation. Things are quite open.
But okay, so just to maybe focus my question more, what I was interested to know was whether there's been more corruption recorded in, for example, right-wing parties as opposed to left-wing, or is there no such distinction and there's corruption on equal amounts of corruption on both sides, for example?
Okay. The problem with the question is that recently the right wing is in power.
Yeah.
So you have more corruption from the Likud or from the right wing for the simple reason that they have more power. They have more power. There are more time they
Fair
rule
enough,
more time. So you have, and we hear more about the corruption of the right. I do believe that if we'll have political change, we'll have, at least for the short run, less corruption.
Okay.
Because this is how it goes usually in corruption. It goes with cycles.
Right.
And after the right was a lot of time the ruling party, the Likud was ruling party. If you will have political change, we will have, at least at the short run, less corruption. Okay,
so leading up to, we have elections in Israel soon, as you know, and in the lead up to these elections, a few corruption cases surfaced. I mean, I personally view those as corruption, but academically you might think otherwise. But what I'm referring to is the Prime Minister's residence, with all the issues that surfaced there, and the issues that surfaced in Israel Beitenu. But my question is, how okay are Israelis with this thing going on? In other words, do they accept it? Do they think it's okay? How much weight do they put on it? Do you think that in any way changes how they vote?
Okay. First of all, about the Prime Minister. The first issue with the Prime Minister is that the facts are not clear. Okay. This is a crucial point, because it's not that the people in Israel accept this kind of behavior.
Do you think they generally don't accept this kind of behavior?
They don't, but they don't believe the press. on the one hand, and the other hand, when the state controller published the report about the prime minister, I read the report. The report is not that clear. So you don't even know what is going on there. It's not that the state controller accused prime minister, crystal clear, loud and clear, said this is a corrupt behavior or improper. He didn't even say that it's improper behavior in this sense. He used soft words.
Do you think that might be because he's somehow related to Bibi in the sense that he looks after Bibi? Because there were, I don't know how true this is, but there are people who claim that Bibi is the one who put him in his position, and and maybe he's influenced by that kind of relationship.
We cannot know for sure why, but I can assure you that the language is soft.
All right.
It's not a harsh report like reports that I read that the State Comptroller Office published before this one.
Okay.
Shapira is not a tough gatekeeper.
Okay.
That's a fact. Nobody will tell you differently.
Okay.
Shapira is the kind of state controller that the government likes in this sense, or corrupt politician would prefer someone like Shapira if you compare it to Lindenstrauss, the former state controller. Yeah. I'm not saying that Shapira didn't fulfill his duty. I'm only saying, I'm willing to say that the report is not crystal clear. Right. It's not saying in a clear things. I'm saying that because if you read the report, you cannot say, well, Netanyahu should go. This is corruption. So if you have a report, which his meaning is ambiguous, it is not very, very clear on the one hand. The other hand, you know that the people in Israel do not trust the press. Right. And they know that there is a politicization, a legitimate politicization of the report. They know that actually what we are witnessing is a political battle about the meaning of the report. So if you are in favor of Netanyahu, you're still in favor of Netanyahu. If you're against him, you use the report against him. In the end, the report or this kind of report doesn't change things, not because the people accept the behavior, because they know that it's a political issue. Okay? So in general, there's another thing about the Israeli voter. As long as the Israeli voter think that the security condition is under threat or is crucial, you will always prefer someone that you think that will take care of security issues, and you put aside the issues of corruption. It's not because you think that corruption is not important, or because it doesn't important if he spend the public money or not. It's important, but there are things that are more important.
They're first concerned about their safety.
That's
and
right.
Then about
and this is natural. It's
not
something that we can say against the Israeli voter. Can't expect from someone that will put the question of this kind of behavior, if you compare it to security issues, and you will say, no, I'm only care, or first priority is how Netanyahu run his houses. Mm-hmm. No. So,
or his wife, for that.
Or his wife.
Yeah.
One last thing, we realize that the issue with Netanyahu is not exactly corruption or not corruption. Okay. It's something slightly different. Okay. There's something about this family. No, I mean, a lot of people know
I know what you're saying, yeah.
A lot of people know it. So it's not exactly about corruption, it's about weird behavior.
Or behavior which is in bad taste.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, so there's grey areas.
That's right. It's a grey area, and I think people understand that the meaning of the report, of this kind of reports today, are not, as long as the evidence and the report is not clear cut, the effect is not very, very dramatic.
Yeah.
It can't.
You mentioned earlier that you see a connection between the first issue we discussed, which was, how democratic, how liberal Israel is, and the extent to which the country is corrupt. I'm not sure whether you explained that linkage before, but I would be happy if you do so again, because I'm curious to.
I think that the key is economic and social equality, which goes hand in hand with an attitude of dignity, honor, equal worth of persons. And if you have equality, if you have an equality among citizens respect each other. and don't discriminate and don't hate each other, and they can sacrifice
Yes.
and serve the public. If you have gaps, inequality, dramatic inequality, and if in addition to inequality you have a state that doesn't care to its citizens, because it cares only for minority or only for interest groups, or I mean the powerful minority, the very wealthy few on the one hand, or certain political parties that are in the coalition, and they sacrifice the majority or the minority, the unrepresented minority. So you have discrimination and you have corruption. The key, the solution, or what can help Israel is to restore maybe something of the welfare state or the welfare regime that lost. And if you improve that, if you improve the economic condition, you can improve a lot of other things, and you can improve the condition of the Arabic citizens, and you can reduce corruption.
Okay.
Because you make better population, you make better people, you make people that have the income, the will, the pride to serve the country, to serve others. They don't feel that they have to fight. They don't feel that they have to kill each other. They don't develop hate. They don't blame anyone because they don't need to. So this is the key, and then you can have a Jewish state that is not a racist state.
Right.
But if you have inequality among the Jews, you will probably have more hate towards the Arabic citizens.
Okay, so regarding the Arab citizens, I'm curious because I always hear that there is racial discrimination, which is in some cases formulated into Israeli law. One example that I always hear about, and I don't know whether this is true, but maybe you would be able to clarify, is that if Arab people want to buy land, for example, they do not have the same rights to buy land as Jewish people do. I don't know if that is, how true is that? Just as an example of a discriminatory issue.
I think it's quite obvious that there are many bureaucratic practices or unwritten rules, you can say.
So they're unwritten. It's not like it's written.
No, there are also written rules or the law of return. That's
there
are things that are formally or official and they influence the status of the Arabic citizens, and they are official, constitutional, and everybody knows it. It's not something that is unwritten.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, you have unwritten rules. You have practices that make equality impossible. And here, once again, the key. I'm not sure that it's this law or that law or specific legal change, because if you don't change the structure, the structure of Israeli society, it doesn't matter what the law is, because for example you have inequality among Jews, which is not you will not find it in
written
Israel,
anywhere,
written, but you have inequality. You have inequality between Ashkenazim and Mizrahim, but it's not something you will not find it anywhere. But it's part of the reality.
Sure.
So we have to understand that the issue is not only or mainly formal law. It's something deeper.
It's actual practice. Yeah.
It's structural, and it's practices, bureaucratic, political practices, something that is in the social relations in Israeli political system. We have to change it, and if you want to change social relations, I think that you must start with something economic, social and economic change.
Okay. So regarding, I'm just very curious about this topic. Regarding the issue of racial discrimination against the Arab citizens. Okay, so it's well known and everyone understands that there is discrimination, whether bureaucratic, in practice, in the method, etc. Would you say it is as bad as apartheid? Is it actually apartheid in practice?
I think, that's a very good question. I don't think so. One of the reasons that we are not witnessing apartheid is that in apartheid you have minority that rules majority.
Right.
And here you have majority, the tyranny of the majority. And it's not only semantic. When you have the tyranny of the majority, the majority can rule without the practices of apartheid. because he can do it.
Because it's a majority.
It's a majority, and he can use the democratic system in order to discriminate.
Right.
So you don't have to use the same amount of power, for example. You don't, because you're the majority, and you have the legitimation of or the legitimacy of the democratic system because you do everything democratically. So this is one of the reasons that I think it's not correct. It's not suitable to say that Israel, in the green line at least, is an apartheid state.
Okay.
However, if the occupation will go on, will continue, then you don't have any more majority that rules minority. You have 50-50 or even, and that's apartheid.
Sure.
Because no one is going to give the Palestinians equal rights. No one in the right wing and all the talks about one state and you give them a citizenship right. It's almost a lie.
How do they not see it, though? I mean, you listen to them; they're intelligent people. How do they not see it? How do they not see that this is where it's headed? That if this carries on, this is where it's going to end up.
Look, it's already 45 and more years. It's working. So you say, okay, we'll continue.
It's
we'll
working,
go on.
Yeah.
We'll combine occupation and we will talk about peace and we will talk about maybe two states, or we will talk about the fact that one day or soon we will give them citizenship right. We'll make them citizens, and you just don't do it, or you do it so slowly, and so we will wait. What do we know? Maybe we'll have another American president. Maybe the Third World War. Who knows?
So
let's. It's a kind of conservative politics, and one of the most prominent prophets or leaders of this kind of politics is Benjamin Netanyahu.
Oh yeah.
It's a conservative. It's the politics of the status quo. Earn time. Don't do a lot of things. Just let's somehow hold what we have. Don't do anything. This is part of the reason that Meir Dagan was talking about the leadership crisis, because when he's thinking, when he's talking about leadership crisis, he thinks about innovation,
right,
about leading, about doing, about changing, not about status quo passivity. But he thinks about activism. But Israel in the last years it's the opposite of activism, opposite of innovation, opposite of leading.
Just sits on his hands and waits.
Right. That's right. Let's wait.
It's unfortunate. Okay, so just to wrap it up.
Wrap it up and then unpack.
That's right. Are you optimistic? Are you optimistic with regards to the upcoming elections? That's the first question. And are you optimistic in general, given everything that you've researched upon regarding, firstly, corruption, and then, Israel being democratic, etc. Or where do you stand?
I would recommend to myself and to whoever wants to listen to be political, which means I'm not thinking if I'm optimistic or pessimistic. Mm-hmm. I know that I want to change things, and I know that there is no one else that will do it for me.
Right.
This is the meaning of democracy, and the meaning of democracy is not something. Once again, it's not something because I read it. I realize. It's not that, well, listen, this is democracy, and we live in democracy, and you have to do it that. No. Think about it. Who will take care of you? Who will take care of your economic condition? Who? Your parents? Your grandparents? No one will take care. So we have to be political. We can't just think, well, I'm pessimistic, nothing will happen, nothing will... We don't have any other choice but
we don't have that privilege, yeah.
We have to act. We have to try to change reality. That's right. Don't stop.
Okay.
Don't stop.
Great. So I think that's a good point to wrap it up. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
It was fascinating.
Thank you.